It looks a lovely day down the marina. There's not much wind. I've got a couple of hours, so I think we'll just get out for the top of tide. As I arrive at Swallow, I can see the mess I left her in last week, with the muck still all over the foredeck. No biggie though. I have to get these covers off. There you go. Magic. It'd be good to start the day with a bit of magic. I'd pick the temperature up, that's for sure. And very possibly a little bit more wind than this. Yeah, different day, different weekend. We've got light airs, got a bit of sunshine, a couple of odd clouds. Supposed to be sunny all day, but it keeps going behind the clouds. But hopefully we'll get a couple of hours nice sailing in. Right, well, as you all know, in order to go sailing, you've got to cast off. So I'm going to cast off. Letting your mooring lines go. It's one of those things you do second nature. The only difference normally you've got to contend with is which way the wind's blowing from. It's blowing from over here, so it'll push me off the pontoon. So that's not a bad thing. But let's pull it back a little bit. I at least need the time to finish getting this stern line in. Bow line's on the bow, and think I'm nearly ready to rock and roll. This easterly seems to have picked up a little bit. It's pushing the bow off. Just look at that fan go. I think it's about 10 to 15 knots now. Well, I'm going to pull it back a little bit just to give me time to get on before I set off. My neighbour there can see me getting ready to go. And I'm sure he's aware it's an easterly and I can drift towards him. Well, into a stern and off we go. Straight backwards. But not the bow by the looks of it. It has its own agenda. So what's happening? I can't work it out. And I think I've just dunked the post. Well, my neighbour's spotted I've made a mess of it, and it looks like he's on his way round to help me out. I realise I'm drifting a little bit towards his boat, so I think I best push the helm over and come forward a little bit now. Rest it on the pontoon ahead rather than touching another vessel. So I put her ahead, but I put the helm over, and I come back to bonk the post again. There won't be any damage. I'm hardly moving. Tiny amounts, just enough to push me through the water, but no effort involved in it, so I'm quite happy that everything will be fine. My neighbour sort of lends a hand here and saves the day, ties my stern in quickly while I walk round to see what's going on, and to find I've left the bow line on the starboard side tied on. Not wanting to make any excuses for my appalling actions and not paying attention to detail, but I was so pleased at mounting the camera on the bow for a change that I completely forgot about the other bow line. So I'll remove the offending item now. Well, I could have cut all this out. I didn't have to show you. But at least it shows you I'm human and we all make mistakes. I hope I don't do this one again in a hurry. And I think I need a haircut as well. Never mind, get this line off, the offending line, throw them on the deck, and I can get the rest of the lines off. I've still got assistance, so it's going to be a lot easier getting the lines off this time and getting gone. There goes, take two. Well, I'm into a stern and she still feels like she's handling funny. She's turning on her own. If you notice, the bow's still moving out a little bit and I'm steering the opposite way, and I normally get a slight amount of steerage. My prop wash doesn't even take me that way, so it must be mud. Unfortunately, at the moment, the marina bottom is in desperate need of dredging, and I think they've been blowing it from one place and it's built up in a couple of other places. I feel like that's what I was sticking on there when I was coming out as well, and that's why, although I was turning to starboard, the boat was turning to port. Well, I'm just glad I'm on my way out now. Although Swallow does feel a little bit sluggish in a lot of manoeuvres at the moment, and I think maybe I need to clean the bottom. Well, I successfully made a pig's ear of that, but I think I rescued it somewhere in the end, and no damage, so no worries. Well, I'm not 100% sure what went on there, and like a fool I left the line on the bow. I made a fun moment, I'm quite sure, for all you people to have a good giggle at home, but there you go. If you want me to show you everything about sailing, that's part of it, forgetting something. But when I was taking the boat backwards, she was very woolly as well. She still feels very woolly now, like she's not responding very well to the helm. It might just be the water because we're going out against the flood. On a brighter note, the log's saying a higher speed now than it's ever said. It's saying 3 knots. So maybe the log's a little bit cleaner after last week than it has been for a bit, but I'm not sure about the rest of the boat. Right, let's get out there. It's at this point in the river, there's a bit of a bottleneck. The flood is coming in ahead of me, and I'm on a back eddy, and the back eddy meets just in front where you can see the unsettled water. So I stay in the back eddy for as long as possible, because as soon as I hit that flow there, which is the flood, the boat will come to a stop over the ground. 6.7 knots I'm doing at the moment over the ground. We're over 6 anyway, but in a second it'll just die down. Watch it dying. 5, 4, 3, 2, and now all the way down to 0.8, 0.7, just about making it over the ground. Well, mainsail up for a bit of assistance from my friend, Mr. Wind, and we'll motor sail through this last bit of current here. Well, I'm heading out towards the banks, and I think this is a lesson I should have learnt last time. 0.8 it says for me depth there, that's about when I hit. So I'm spilling the wind out of me sails. I've only got a tiny, I've rolled the foresail mostly away, and there's just a little bit of it, and the mainsail's basically spilling the wind. I'm in line with the boys, and I've hardly got any water. These boys must have dragged last year and have not been put back yet, because this is really the shallowest way out. This passage is north deep. I've seen a powerboat which draws more than this, shooting past me on the port side, going over where the banks would normally be, and he flew along and there was no orange water around him. It's a rising tide and I'm going slow enough, so I'm not panicked. Shut the engine off. We've got 2 metres here. We haven't moved far from that buoy over there, but we've gone on the wrong side of it, and there's more water than there is on the right side of it. It was dropped below a metre, as you can see. I was starting to worry because I touch about then. I feel a little bit better here. I've got the engine off, so I have a touch. I know it's all sandbanks, but I think I'll put a little bit more sail up. We're making 1.4 knots over the ground, and it says nothing through the water now, where it said 3.7 before, which is the fastest it's ever said through the water. Oh. Right, well there we go, let's see what happens. That's my next green buoy, centre of screen, and there's a red over there to watch out for, which marks the end of the rock sticking out, and there's the green. So there's a fair gap to go between, but I don't think these are in the deepest place at all. That's the Great Orme in front of us, and that's the west shore of Llandudno. And that's a beautiful wake. Swallow's moving nicely through the water now, but the winds round here are a little bit unpredictable because they curl off the land, so 1 minute you've got them and then you haven't. I've got everything up, my full genoa and my full main, and she's slipping along quite nicely, and the wake says 5 knots-ish, but my log doesn't. My log's down to about 3, which is a good reading for my log. The depth is reading 3.2, which is quite enough. I'm sure it'll just get deeper and deeper from here on out. Well, with weather like this, you can see why I just had to nip out for a top of the tide sail. There's a lot of very beautiful properties line the shoreline of the west side of the Great Orme. Very lucky people to have such nice houses. But to me, the Great Orme remains a place that I can walk around, cycle round and sail round, and I enjoy all three. The west shore here blends into the gangway over here, and this is where my mate lives, David, down here. This markers the landed no shore, marks the end of the outfall. I think you got more chance of hitting the buoy than you have the end of the outfall. There's a boat just ahead of me, and it's a Fire Crest, a golden gaffer with mark on it. You can just see it there in the distance like a little dot. Well, I want to see if we can catch him up. In between me and him, there's the shadow of the Orme on the water, which should make sort of a hollow area where, although we've got a nice pace going now, it will slow down and I'll lose me 5 knots over ground, but as we come out from the Orme, it will pick back up again. Well, that's Fire Crest on its way back. I've zoomed in on him, so it looks like he's going the other way. We'll carry on for a bit. That's the lighthouse on the end of the Great Orme up there. That's not used anymore as a lighthouse, but sometimes he hangs a light in the window and you can see it. Well, we seem to have a nice airstream of a steady 12 to 16 knots on the beam, and the boat's doing very well. She's pushing herself along at just on 6 knots. She feels very comfortable in the water, and she's pointing towards Cumbria-ish, and I could just sort of like sit on it and let it go, but unfortunately I've got work tomorrow, so I can't. I'll have to turn it round at some point. It's hard to beat a beam reach on a sunny day, and if it's taking you your way, well, you just don't get much better than that, do you? The only thing you could add today is some temperature to go with it. Looks like I've took my eye off the ball. I've just glanced backwards and Mark, the Fire Crest, creeping up behind me. Well, last year he was quicker than me, but he's not going to be this year. But he's certainly going to give it a good bash. Well, I'm not going to tweak anything. I'm just going to leave Swallow to her own devices. See how she gets on. And about 15 minutes later, she's still in the same place, And Firecrest still in the same place, so she's holding her own well. Well, I hove to and give her time to catch up and say hello. So she did. She popped along and say hello before she turned round and headed on her way back. A lovely boat, Firecrest. Well, I think it's time for my cuppa. So I'm hove to here, and that radar receiver always gets in the way of the sail if it's all out. I should really wind it halfway home before I heave to. The sea state is that of a steady force 4, and that's me slick, and I'm making just over a knot through the water. But I'm making it in the direction I'm pointing, so I'm not unhappy about that. And the lee side of the boat's really calm if you wanted to put a dinghy in or recover somebody or anything else. And yet it was quite lively just before. Well, see Breakover, my new camera position which I've been trying, and let that get going while I start setting my way back and see what that looks like. Now I'll only stay on it for a minute, but I forgot it were recording and it were on for ages until I sort of twigged when I'd come to sat on the foredeck. So I think I might skip to that bit where I come to sit on the foredeck and then realise the camera's still recording, because otherwise this shot, although I could watch it forever, I don't think you could. You can see my little head bobbing round there while I'm getting up to stuff and completely forgetting I've just put the camera on to record. I tell you what you do get from this though. You get a good feeling to how smooth she is, what emotion's like when you see how she reacts. She's very calm and sedate and just pushes the waves aside as she slips on through. Really, just the kind of motion you want to be able to move around on the boat, should you have to. Well, fast forward 20 minutes, and here I am, coming out the boat. I've got my camera in my hand, and I can see the arm coming up, and I'm thinking, I'll get a picture of the arm. I'd completely forgotten at this point about the camera recording on the bow. And it's about now that I look forward, and I can see a red light flashing at me, and then I think, go, I've got a red light flashing at me. Look at that. I best deal with it. And I don't know what to do with my other camera while I'm moving along the boat in order to turn this one off. Well, if you look on the horizon, just at my bows, you can just about see the Golden Gaffer in the distance there, about half to 3/4 mile away. Well, with a little bit of luck, we might see him again. Swallow's still putting in a respectable performance, and she's staying above the 5 knots, which, as you know, always makes me very happy. I plan everywhere I go and everything I do on 5 knots, so when I'm making it, I know I'm achieving my passage plan, and when I'm not, I know I should have been doing something else to get it right. This area here is susceptible to wind over tide. Should it arise, the sea can rise up quite a bit here. The mountains on the right hand side of the screen, well, they're all Conway Mountains, that lot in front, with the clouds sitting on their heads. Well, we're doing alright. We're still over 5 knots most of the time. The speed on the GPS varies continuously, and I often wonder to myself whether that's the motion of up wave and down wave speeding you and slowing you as you go. But anyway, if it says 6 and it goes down to 5, in my head I just say 5.5. As we're getting towards the Great Orme's Head, the air picks up a little bit, just because it's a big lump of rock and it gets in the way, so the wind has to speed up to go round it. In the distance, the land which is light grey, that's the Little Orme, and the darker land that you see is the Great Orme, and the gap between those two, well, that's Llandudno Bay. And if you look hard onto the horizon ahead of us, you can still see Mark and his gaffer making his way. We haven't caught him yet. I dare say we never will. Swallow has a habit of not wanting to catch anyone or overtake anyone. I think I could hear her saying something just before, and I think it was something like, "Ah, do we have to go home already?" But unfortunately, if I want to get in the marina before it closes so I can go to work tomorrow, yeah, we do. Now the wind direction's changed a little bit at the moment. It seems to be coming round after us a bit. That's because it's curling round the horn, pushing us along. Mark doesn't look like he's got the best of airs ahead of me. He looks like he's drifting off to leeward a bit. 2 miles ahead of us, we've got the banks. Now I'm just going to go straight across the centre of them when I get there and see what the depths are like. They can't be any worse than following the route around the buoyage round the side, and I'm sure about that. I keep wanting to stick the camera in the water to see if it'll take a keel shot, but then I think I'm going to lose the camera, so I'm not brave enough. Not tons of wind, and it's really pleasant inside here. All the wind's gone as soon as you come in, whatever there is of it. We're averaging about 10 to 15 knots. Enough to keep most of the sail up, but I've reefed on the foresail a little bit because it was a bit gusty at the end of the arm. The wind picks up a little bit, curls around the arm, and well, you don't know whether to set the sails which way or what way. There you go. It's a pretty rock, the Great Orme, and you can see it from miles and miles and miles away, so it's a good pointer to where home is. The air seems to have died down now, so I've unrolled the foresail. And I'm hard on the wind as well, and I can see Mark in front of me, and it looks like I've caught him up a little bit as well. Now he's heeled where he is, so there's more wind ahead of me, so I'm in the lee of the Great Orme again, and that's why we're going nice and slow. Well, actually, we're not going nice and slow. We're still doing a decent pace. The air's light, 11 knots, and we're doing 4 knots-ish, so 4 knots from 11. Not bad at all. Well, sails are set close hauled now, and she's sailing really well. She doesn't seem to be making too much leeway, and she seems to be pushing away through the water well, so I'm really pleased, and I think that's got a lot to do with the deck track alterations, letting the sail have its shape. Sometimes it's just worth doing those jobs that need doing. Well, I've dropped my mainsail, I'm over the banks, I went in a straight line. This is coming into the buoyage now, at the estuary. They both flew along, and I never seen less than 3.5 metres anywhere. So I don't think I'll be paying attention to the buoyage in the future. Straight line will do. Well, the wind's in a perfect direction to just sail down the river. Now the tide has started coming out, but we've still got plenty of headway into it. Happy Dave over there on his Sabre 27 got the same idea as me. Just take a look at all them empty mooring buoys ahead of me. And that's not because they're all out sailing because it's such a nice day. It's more due to the fact that they're not in the water yet. Oh, and that's Mark in the distance back there on the Golden Gaffer. I don't know what he did towards the end, but I slipped past him, but he wasn't in the same direction as me. He was off in another direction entirely. So we won't be chalking that up as overtaking anyone. That's the entrance there to Conway Marina. That's on the starboard side of Conway River as you go in. I'm on the port side over there, the Conway Marina, which I'm nearly there now. When I get to the end of these mooring buoys in front of me, there's like a left turn. Right, I'm sort of at the point where I make a turn to port. So I've wound most of the foresail up and there's just a little bit left out. That little bit there, and that lets me tread water just here. I've got a nice open patch, and I can put any fenders on or do any ropes I want to do and get things sorted out so that I'm ready to go in. Don't need much sail to sit the water here at all. So there's still a little bit of a draft coming down the river. There seems to be a lot more wind noise on my camera. For some reason, I don't know. Well, I'm very sorry about it, and I hope it doesn't destroy your pleasure of watching too much. Well, thanks very much for watching. If you've managed to get this far, give yourself a pat on the back. I'm in the marina now, and I'm on my way home. This is a dredger, or a type of dredger, supposedly taking out all the mud and the silt from the marina, but I think it's just moving it round, because I was definitely stuck in mud when I wanted to go out. Well, let's hope on the next adventure we get to stay out for the night, at least one, and then that'll make life a little bit more fun and a bit more interesting. Until then, bon voyage everyone.